I know we're boycotting the Super Bowl. I know we're boycotting the Super Bowl. It's been real quiet, but with number 47 most recent brazen demand to remove the slogan "End Racism" from the NFL end zone, and the long-standing history of dehumanization of black athletes, I know black women are not the only ones expected to abstain from the list. Sports is entertainment, not an essential. Racism in the NFL. Let's talk about it. Now, I have to admit, I was never a real sports enthusiast. However, about 15 years ago, I was dating a young man, and he invited me to his home to watch the NFL draft. And at the time, I can't recall if these clips were like inserted in between the draft picks or if this was just what was happening and the draft was something separate. But what I do recall was so disturbing to me, I was just left speechless. On the television, they were showing the process, how athletes, NFL athletes, were evaluated. They were testing their lung capacity. They were like measuring their body parts. I do even believe that they had them opening their mouths for like oral examination like cattle. And I remember thinking to myself, how can you be watching this and not be disturbed about it? Because the only other time I saw such just disrespectful dehumanization of a person was when I would watch those documentaries on slaves being sold on the block. And that's what it reminded me of. I saw all of these big buffed athletes, these with all of this promise, and they were just being pawned over and picked over and propped by white men. I have no words. Now, I don't know a lot about sports, but I do know that black athletes for decades were denied the coveted spot of quarterback. Not because they didn't have the fortitude or the athleticism to possess the position, because they were thought to have less brain capacity. Colin Kaepernick had a docuseries on Netflix entitled Colin in Black and White, where he recounts his formative years and his experiences with racism, class, and culture. And in that docuseries, he makes the following quote as it relates to his experience being in the NFL and how it was very reminiscent to what he could imagine the slaves experienced on the auction block. Hold on, I want to read it verbatim. In the docuseries, Colin in Black and White, Mr. Kaepernick was highly criticized for making the following statement. Before they put you on the field, teams poke, prod, and examine you, searching for any defect that might affect your performance. No boundary respected, no dignity was left intact, he added, as scenes from a slavery auction played out. When I read that quote, it took me way back to that date that I had watching the NFL draft with my friend. When I watched the measurements and the litmus test for performance, agility, fortitude, I thought it was so dehumanizing to measure body parts, to, test them as though they were testing out cattle. So I knew exactly what Mr. Kaepernick was referencing. And I know that some of you all have a problem with Mr. Kaepernick. So let's talk about the two retired NFL players that brought lawsuits against the NFL for their discrimination in the concussion lawsuit, where $1 billion was in the pot. And to summarize this, black athletes were bringing lawsuit against the NFL for experiencing dementia after their careers and just overall diminished capacity. Well, the NFL claimed that these athletes had diminished capacity when they came into the league because their ability to think, process, critical think was significantly lower than their white counterparts. Therefore, they were either not entitled to the money that was in the pot for the concussion claim, or they were to receive a significant less amount because, by the way, they weren't up to snuff in the first place. So I'll just read this. The NFL agrees to end race-based brain testing in $1 billion settlement on concussion. So they were making black athletes test before they even could be eligible to be considered to receive any of this money. The NFL agreed to end race-based adjustments in dementia testing that critics said makes it difficult for black retirees to qualify for awards in the $1 billion settlement of concussion claims, according to a proposed deal filed Wednesday in the federal court. This was in 2020. This wasn't that long ago. 2020, we're still that's COVID time. We're still dealing with the ramifications of COVID. The revised testing plan follows public outrage over the use of race norming, a practice that came to light only after 2 NFL players filed a civil rights lawsuit over it in 2019. The adjustments, critics say, may have prevented hundreds of black players suffering from dementia to win awards that was average of $500,000. So I'll just insert a pic of the 2 NFL players that brought lawsuit against the $1 billion concussion settlement, Ken Jenkins and Clarence Vaughn III, along with their wives. So, we're not short of examples of discrimination and racism that exists amongst the NFL. And I've heard people say, oh, I'm just going to watch the halftime show. Well, I take issue with that because to me, that's no different than the pushback and argument we got against. We'll still go to Target, but we'll only shop black products. No. It's all or nothing. And we should keep that same energy. And I understand the argument that for a lot of these athletes, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and they work so hard to get to this point in their careers and their profession. But the same could be said for those individuals that we are calling to pull their merchandise out of boycott, and most of those are female. So let's make sure that we're not expecting more of our women folk than our men. And no, I don't expect for NFL players not to show up and do their job, no more than I would expect the minimum wage workers at Target not to show up to do theirs. They all need their checks. I get that. But what I am saying is we do not have to watch the NFL in real time. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some recording somewhere, especially the halftime show. Tune in later. Don't give them the time today. And to be honest, I wouldn't be mad if the NFL enacted its own version of the blue flu today. Just saying. And one last thing. In light of this Hillman Talk shadow ban, we know that the powers that be are highly strategic. It's no coincidence that we regain access to those videos right before the Super Bowl.